We are finally, after 6 long years, getting another Dresden Files book, either by the end of this month or next month, whichever I managed to get this video out by. And while I personally read the whole series back in 2022, so I haven't been waiting as long, 6 years is still an awfully long time to wait for a new book in your favorite series. So I feel bad for anyone who had to wait that long. That being said, though, I think now is probably the best time to make good on a promise I made way back in 2022 when I was talking about this in my year wrap-up of books that I read, and rank every book in the Dresden Files from worst to best. Now, I want to make it clear right now, I'm not ranking any of these side stories, the short stories, or anything like that. I'm only ranking the core 18 as of right now. No, I'm not going to be ranking any short stories, novellas, anything like that. We are just going from Stormfront to Battlegrounds. And when the next book comes out, at the end of the next year, when I make my end of the year wrap up, I will place it in the ranking. So if you are interested in my thoughts on that, you'll have to wait until the end of next year. And with that said, let's jump into this list. Before we jump into this, I will give a quick spoiler warning. I am going to be talking about plot elements to this, and if you're somebody who has not caught up with the series, then I very much recommend that you do so before you watch this video. And that means my girlfriend as well, because she has not read Peace Talks or Battleground, and I don't want to get her spoiled on anything that happens in that. So I feel like I should preface right now that the term worst is obviously subjective, and even at their worst, these are still really good books. It's just, when you're comparing the last place book on my list to even the top 3 of my list, it's very, very clear that there is a gap in how far the series can go. With that said, my last place is actually going to be Full Moon. This suffers from what I like to call first sequelitis, where it's very obvious that the overall plot has not been fully thought out yet, so it's more just the characters doing character stuff. It's still pretty early on in the Dresden Files. It's very episodic in the first 5 or 6 books, and this one is the one that benefits the absolute least from that. My biggest problem with this stems from the fact that there is such a heavy focus on werewolves, which is weird because I love werewolves, but the effort to make all 3 versions of werewolves come into play in this book just makes it feel sloppy all over the place and not handled very well. You get the introduction of Dark Harry in this book, which does not work very well in this book because there's no point where Harry is it feels like Harry's actually having to question the actions he's taking. There's just overall not a lot in this book that I enjoyed. This is probably the book that I would be least likely to reread if I wasn't just rereading the entire series. There is some good stuff, you get Billy and the Alphas in this book that comes in, but overall, so much of this book is still just all over the place. The fact that the plot line for who gave the FBI agents the Hexenwolfen belts is still not answered 16 books later or 15 books later is really, really bad. I did not enjoy reading this one too much. This is probably if there was a book that would probably make people stop reading the Dresden Files, it might be this one. And that's kind of sad to say because, again, this is a really good series. When you see what my top 3 is, you'll understand why this one's in the last place, because it's just not quite as good as this series can get. Next up is going to be Blood Rights. My point for this is just, there's a lot of complaints for this series that say that it's very male-gazy and whatnot. This is probably the biggest example of that. I don't like how overly zealous it is with the just adult themes in the series. That's kind of what it is. You get the reveal in this book that Thomas is Harry's half-brother, which is a great reveal, adds a lot of depth to the story that happens later on. For an asexual, it's not very fun to read. You got Harry working as a security guard on a corn set, and it's just not... I did not enjoy reading this one at all. There's a lot of, very bizarre stuff that happens at the end where Laura Wraith takes over the family of the White Court, and it's implied that she does it through some very... suspicious manners, but this is not a very fun book for me personally to read, and that's why I'm putting it in my second to last place. Next up is going to be the very first book in the series, Stormfront. This one is not bad. Like I said, even at their worst, these are still good books. It is a story of first case that Harry goes on. Ultimately, it's just kind of wildly unimpactful. Like, you get the introduction of the one court of vampires in this book, which is very interesting. You get a quick overview of the magic system, which gets more expanded on later on. And there's also, like, the implications of what happens with Harry's backstory and whatnot. It is a good book. Reading it is very quick and easy. It's a lot of fun. When you compare it to later books, it's pretty obvious that it's just not going to hold the weight class. Next up on the list is actually going to be White Knight. Full disclosure, this one's down this low because I straight up did not remember anything that happened in this book. After quickly reading a plot summary on Wikipedia, yeah, that's probably a good reason why. The most interesting thing that happens in this book is you get the death of Lash, which is the shadow in Harry's mind of Laciel. They try to red herring Thomas as a killer in this, saying he's killing, like, witches and magical practitioners, and that doesn't work because Thomas knows who his mother is. Thomas isn't going to be doing that. So the plot line does not really work too well. And ultimately, I just feel like this is probably the least interesting book. I mean, it has the death of the Grey Cloak villain. Ultimately, I didn't even remember anything of this. At least I could remember something of the other books. So then this one is just kind of uninteresting to me, I guess. I think that would put it lower on the list. But I would argue being able to remember bad stuff from a book is more important than being able to just not remember anything from a book at all. So yeah, that's why it's still winding up pretty low on this list. Next up is going to be Summer Night. I remember this one because it brought in all of the Fae stuff, the 2 different fairy courts and whatnot. I felt like the plot line was kind of all over the place. It winds up being like the Summer Lady and the Summer Knight are the killers. And it feels like it comes out of nowhere a little bit. Like, it tries to be like, oh, there was foreshadowing, but it's like, it doesn't work as well as it does in some of the later books. I remember the final battle also being a little bit difficult to read properly because of how it was framed. They were running through these armies of fairies that were battling over the top of Chicago with like a stone plate thing. So it was very interesting. It does obviously feed into later parts of the series, but I didn't really care too much for it when I was reading it, mostly because it's sandwiched between 2 of what I think are just genuinely really good Dresden novels, which we'll get to later on down this list, so maybe that's kind of why I just don't remember it as well. And the next book on the list is going to be Peace Talks. I would like to rate both this and Battleground together, as they were supposed to be written as one single book before getting split in half, but I can't do that because they are 2 separate books that got split in half. So we're just kind of stuck ranking Peace Talks by itself. And by itself, Peace Talks is not terrible, but not fantastic either. We're still in the category of what I would just label good Dresden books, rather than great or fantastic. For this one, I would still just rank it as good. There's a lot of political intrigue in this. There's a lot of discussions. You get the entire plot line with Thomas coming to Harry, and it's seeming like Thomas is being framed for a murder that he may or may not have committed. And it is genuinely just a lot of political intrigue in this book. It is a massive setup book that gets paid off later in Battleground. So unfortunately, this is a lot of rising action, no real climax, and no real falling action. I cannot rate this very highly, but I feel like right here at the very end of what I would label good Dresden books, before we get to great Dresden books, is right about where I would put it. And on the subject of great Dresden books, just outside of our top 10 is going to be Ghost Story. This may be controversial. I know that there's a lot of people that do like this book and a lot of people that don't like this book. I actually think that it is a really great book. It follows up the massive cliffhanger from Changes, where Harry is kind of stuck in limbo, basically. He's a ghost wandering around. He goes to, what was it, Mortimer, I believe was the guy's name? The one necromancer we are introduced to later on, or earlier on in the series, who seems to have grown in power a lot as after meeting Harry. He's practicing various different ways. We learn how ghosts work in the Dresden universe. We learn how one of the previous villains is still around, kicking around, causing problems as a ghost, and she winds up getting killed. It was a really good book, especially with the plot twist at the end that no, Harry's not dead, and unfortunately, he is still bound to Matt. So I definitely think that this one maybe doesn't get the credit it deserves by some people, and maybe does get a little bit too much credit from others, because some of the stuff does still feel like it comes out of left field, but ultimately what is here is really, really great. We are officially about to move into our top 10. And if you see behind me here, you see the books that we have on order. Or maybe you can't, I can't quite tell from the camera lanes. But yeah, the top 10 of Dresden books, in my opinion, is absolutely stacked. Let's get into it. At number 10, we have Grave Peril. The introduction to the greatest character in Dresden Files, Michael. I will not be hearing any debate about this. It's Michael. As well as Thomas, too. Thomas gets introduced in this. We get Susan gets turned into a vampire in this book. This is when the story of the Dresden Files really starts kicking into high gear. It's still episodic for the next 2 or 3 books. The plot actually starts to progress here, and it starts to build up pretty substantially. And I think that this book especially captures the tenseness of it very well in the early books. I do think that there are some that do the tension better, and I do think that there's some that do the remaining bits justice for Michael and all of that, but I feel like it needs to be in the top 10. I think it is still a great book. Following after Grave Peril, I put Proven Guilty. Proven Guilty follows the story of Molly starting to get her powers developing and whatnot, and unfortunately indirectly violating one of the laws of magic. It is a very, very interesting story where it sees Harry start taking on a more mentor-style role that winds up becoming pretty integral to his character later on, and it also starts laying the groundwork for Harry as the father figure that we wind up seeing towards the later half of the series. I think that this was really good. I definitely enjoyed this one a lot when I was reading it. I don't have any scenes from it that stick in my memory too well. I just remember genuinely being kind of impressed with this book. I'm putting it at number 9. Next up, we have Death Masks, the 5th book in the Dresden Files, and the introduction to just so much in this series. You get the introduction of Nicodemus and the Nenarians, the other Knights of the Cross with Michael. At the very end, he gets the coin with Laciel. There is just so much in this book that gets established, including in a massive escalation between the Red Court vampires and the White Council, which is caused by Ebenezer, who pulls a satellite out of orbit and drops it on Ortega's house. That is still one of the wildest things that happens early on in the series. Like, holy crap. This is a really, really, really good one. This was the point where I was, like, fully locked in with the Dresden Files. A lot of fantasy series take a while to get going because you've got the world building, you've got the characters, you've got whatever magic system to establish. It can take a little bit to get through them, especially with how short these books are in comparison to stuff like, say, The Wheel of Time or even Lord of the Rings, and how more modernly these are written compared to those two. It's so easy to get through these books and just be hooked before you realize what's going on. And this is the book, I think, that hooks so many people in. Like I said, there's just so many plot points that get established in this book that come into play later, and it is fan-fucking-tastic. Next up, we have Deadbeat. This one is incredibly cool. There's a lot of focus on necromancy. You get the Wild Hunt, the Urkling. There's no way to talk about this book without talking about one of the most iconic scenes from the series. He rides a zombified T-Rex. That alone should put it in the top 10. Like, that's a sick-ass thing. Not a lot of series are gonna fucking just whip that out of nowhere. This one's just a blast to read. I don't know why I tend to enjoy the more action-heavy books in series like this, but this is definitely one of the more action-heavy books that is really good, and I found myself enjoying it. This is probably one of the ones I would reread the quickest if I was going to do a full reread of the series. Just outside the top 5 is Small Favor. So Small Favor is a very interesting book. You have a overlap with the fairy plotline and the Denarian plotline. Mab winds up taking Harry's fire magic away from him so he can't be tracked by the Gruffs, who are a constant threat throughout this book, including just like a giant one that has a massive action set piece against Harry. But probably the best part of the book, when he outsmarts the oldest Gruff by calling in a favor that the Fairy Queen owes him from back in, like, I think it was book 4 or something around there. It was a genuinely very interesting book. There is a great little bit of foreshadowing in it that you don't find out until Battlegrounds, because one of the Denarian coins goes missing, and I still desperately want to know what happens. We'll cover it when we get to Battlegrounds, but I desperately want to know what's going to happen in the future with that. We are officially out of great Dresden books, and with the final 5, no one should be surprised. It's from the last half of the series that has come out so far. We enter into the realm of fantastic Dresden books. And again, you shouldn't be surprised that these 5 are here. There's so much build up, so much setup for them that they pay off. When you look at fantasy series that set up multiple things early on, when that stuff finally gets paid off, it is a great moment for the series. And when you have such a massive, expansive world like this, you can expand on it and layer the plot lines and pay off some stuff so much better, and it makes the plot so much more interesting. From Turncoat to Battleground, these are our top 5. And we're going to go through them one by one to see which one is the best. Pulling in at number 5, we have Turncoat. The story that takes a character like Morgan and makes him an actually likable person. You get to know Morgan a lot in this book, and it's legitimately very sad at the end when he finally just passes away. There's a lot of more political intrigue in this, with different factions being introduced, different things getting moved around on the board, and a lot of very interesting stuff happening. But ultimately, the stuff with Morgan is what's the most important here, as well as the finding out that, yeah, Harry's girlfriend, who is currently like one of the lead wardens, isn't actually in love with him, which is low-key sad but funny. And I honestly think that this book is very good. If you can take a one-note, unlikable douchebag and make him into a fan-favorite character in one singular book that is only 545 pages, you definitely achieve something pretty substantial here. The only reason it doesn't get higher in the top 5 is just because our top 4 are stacked. I could easily see this being somebody's favorite book, and I would never argue with them on that point. Next up on the docket is Cold Days, just outside the top. This is the first book that follows Harry as the Winter Knight. There is just so much that happens in this book. The reveal that the Outsiders have been playing along this entire time. You get the death of both the Summer Lady and the Winter Lady, who are both then replaced. The revelation that you can kill immortals and whatnot in this book. There's so much in this book, and that's not even talking about the fact that this book has Harry lead the Wild Hunt with Murphy. That is such a cool scene and such a cool set piece in this book, but ultimately, like, that just falls behind all of the, like, intrigue and political moves and all of the stuff that happens in this book that you kind of forget about it after the end of it, because there's just so much in this book that happens, and it's very good. I like this book a lot, even if it did take me a little bit longer to read, because this is a much bigger book than some of the other ones, clocking in at like 600 and something pages. Overall, this book, if it's not in your top 5, I don't know what you're thinking. And now that we're done with the top 5, we're moving into the top 3, and these are what I deem to be all-time classics. I really don't know how much my ranking is going to change as more Dresden books come out. Maybe when the whole series is done, I will revisit this idea and remake this list a little bit better. And I'll also give the series another quick read through, because unfortunately, doing this when you haven't read the series in 4 years is not a smart idea, because I tend to forget some of the plot points. But overall, I think my vibe and general feelings towards each book is still pretty accurate. As of right now, these are my top 3. Number 3 is Skin Game. Now this one is really, really, really good. Absolute fantastic work that was done with this book. You've got Harry working with the Denarians. Nicodemus specifically, because remember, at this point there's 2 established factions of Denarians. And we also find out that there was a bet between Nicodemus and Mab, but we don't find out what that bet is, which has led to a lot of fan theories. And I definitely think that overall the kind of chessboard-esque nature of this book, where every person is trying to make certain moves and play around certain things, and then the reveal at the end that Harry did everything that he could to stack the deck before the game started, was really well done. You get the introduction of Hades, which is really, really fucking cool, because by this point, you know, you've got the fairy courts, you've got Odin, you get an implication that all three of the higher up fairies, the Winter Lady, the Summer Queen, and Lady Summer, and then the vice versa for the other ones, are also Hecate, which I'm wondering if that will come into play at some point. But this book was fantastic. It was tense. There was a lot of action, and it's a literal heist movie in the Dresden Files universe. Like, that is honestly super fucking cool. And I think a lot of the work done with this book is very good, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the future following this book. We have, I think Jim Butcher said that he is doing 23 or 25. Given the fact that the Denarians appear every 5 books, we have at least one more encounter with Nicodemus, possibly 2. We still don't know what role he's going to play in the big apocalyptic trilogy that's going to take place at the end of the series. I'm very excited for the future with the Denarians, especially given the fact that there's at least 2 coins that are stuck in the underworld with Hades. That will be interesting. And my number 2 book, this is going to be surprising to everybody, is Changes. Changes is fantastic. Changes is what makes the Dresden Files so great. You have Harry finding out that he has a daughter. You have the death of Susan, which has brought many people to tears. You have him taking on the mantle of the Winter Knight. You have the eradication of the Red Court. There's just so much that happens in this one book that it literally changes the entire world of the Dresden Files. And I don't think that it's unfair to say that this is the best book. And if you disagree with me on the placement, you're totally right. Like, there's reasons why this is still held up as the best Dresden Files book. It is heartfelt, it is powerful, and it is legitimately sad, too, especially at the ending. I want to talk for a second about the fan theory. Probably one of the most interesting things about this is that we learn later on there was a shadow over Harry trying to influence him while he was debating what he needed to do after he basically had his back broken. This is the point where he chooses to side with Mab and not the Denarians. It is widely believed that that is the deal or the bet that was made between Nicodemus and Mab that is referenced in Skinye. This is all just a fan theory. It has not been confirmed to be canon yet, but I definitely do think it will wind up being canon because that's a very interesting plot line. And Nicodemus is kind of like the master of shadows in this series. So having a shadow trying to influence Harry one way or the other is pretty well what happened. Especially since Mab straight up says in their bet he cheated. I wonder how that's going to factor into the future of the series. This is absolutely peak for Dresden Files. Like, it's a toss-up between my first and my second for a lot, from what I've seen from a lot of people, but this one I see come out on top more than others. If you say that this is still your favorite, you're not wrong, and I'm not going to disagree with you because this is an absolute fucking banger of a book. But for me, by process of elimination, if you've been keeping track, the single best Dresden Files book is Battleground. Now, why is it Battleground over Changes? Well, as I said earlier, I like the more action-packed books, and this book is non-stop, balls-to-the-wall action. It is half of a book that was started with Peace Talks, and yes, I did rank Peace Talks low because I had to rank it as its own book. The thing with that is, Peace Talks doesn't have as much going on in it as Battleground does. The stuff that happens in Battleground is literally shaping up to be one of the most... This is Changes Part 2. Okay, you get, and look away now if you for some reason are watching this and ignore the spoiler warning. 3, 2, 1. You get the death of Murphy. You get basically the destruction of Chicago, the outing of the entire magical world to the main world, You get multiple gods coming into play and battling. You get an entire fight between Mab, Odin, and the Erkling versus Ethnu. And it is so cool because it's described as like all of these different timelines coming into place where these immortal beings are like shifting and shifting and shifting. And at the end, Ethnu wins. Like, it's honestly crazy. The only reason they beat her at the end is because it's revealed that fucking Marcone took one of the Denarian coins for one of like the powerful wizards, Denarians, Thorn Namashiel, I believe, and helped Harry drag Ethnu to the end and hold her in place pretty much with a fight until Demon Reach pulled her to the prison. It's such a fucking insane ending to this book. And that's not even discussing all of the stuff that gets revealed with Justine being attacked by, or basically possessed by Nemesis, pregnant with Thomas's child, and then Harry getting kicked out of the White Council for almost killing Rudolph. It is so insane. This book changes the Dresden Files universe even more than changes it. And I'm so excited for what comes next. The next two books are going to be 12 Months and Mirror Mirror. And while there's a bunch of fan theories about Mirror Mirror, 12 Months is also supposed to pay off the entire thing about the Starborn, which is a plot point introduced in this book, as well as the fact that the leader of the Black Council, Dracul, is a Starborn. Like, I could gush about this book for a solid video on its own. There is so much with this book that just is spectacular. And I cannot wait to get the next books in my hand. Because I waited 4 years. Okay, like I read this in 2022. But to have to wait 6 years for the payoff of this is ridiculous. If I had to take 6 years to write a book, it better be the end of the fucking series. Because holy shit. Battlegrounds is my number one. And sure, maybe the recency bias of it being the most recent one will not hold it up to scrutiny later on when I reanalyze this series. But I definitely think that it's staying in this spot for a pretty long time. And there you have it, guys. My final ranking, as of right now, for every book in the Dresden Files series. What are your opinions on this series? What do you think is the best book? Is it Changes? Is it Battlegrounds? Is it something that maybe I put too low? Well, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.